gears assignment. So if you're ready for the next assignment, you can start on the gears stuff. The previous one, we modeled something very simple, just using some of the basic tools. We laid out the UVs, we brought it into Substance Painter, brought it back into Maya, and then rendered out a still 3000 by 2400. Just to show a couple things that popped up, Arnold is new to me. I've used it kind of, not all the time, but I've used it a few times. Come on. And these are some things that kind of popped up when we were troubleshooting some stuff. There we go. Come on. All right, so before you did the AI standard surface, right? So that's the material that you should be using for all your surfaces. Your color, that's what gets mapped to that color image that you had from Substance. So I'm just going to go and set my project to the other one real quick. Project. All right, so you had a basic color. You may have noticed that you get a TX file. So Arnold will automatically create this .tx file every time you render an Arnold. It takes your PNG or whatever file format you have, makes a TX file. So when you go to link stuff, if the TX is already there, you can use the TX file, okay? You'll notice a slight color difference. This one has been color corrected. That one has not yet, okay? So either one doesn't matter. We still change our filter type to off. That's no big deal. Now, looking at each of these areas, do you see how the color here is an actual picture of a black color swatch? Okay, that's a 3-value digit or 3-value number. Basically, it's going to take from that file red, green, and blue and populate those color values. When you see something like roughness or metalness, that's a single digit. It's 0 to 1 is what it's doing. That's taking the grayscale value of it. So before in Maya, what it would do is when it had a number like this, it would automatically turn the switch on that worked. Now, it looked like on mine that it worked when I lectured, but maybe it didn't. I don't know. So when I go to something like metalness, and I'm applying the metalness from Substance, the metallic, it's reading the black and white values, but right now it isn't reading anything, okay? It doesn't know whether it should grab the red, the green, or the blue. So we have to tell it which one we want to do. So what we're going to do is go under color balance, and we're going to tell it that the alpha is luminance. Now what that means is take all of our color channels, make it black and white, and the brightness of this is going to be what value you're going to use. Okay, so the brighter spots on our image will be the brightest, or will be the parts that it's using for that metallic surface or the metalness area. Okay. So the same thing would apply for roughness. So when you click on that and you go to File and you load in your roughness, oops, there it is. You'll come down here to Alpha's Luminance and you'll click that on too. Once you click that button, you can still tweak these things, okay? All of these here would then apply. So I could take this exposure down or up, and now that will start to affect what that specific one is doing. So if I apply my roughness and I'm like, it's a little bit too rough or it's a little bit too shiny, I can play with this exposure to control the roughness of it, make it more rough or less rough. Okay, so you see I can take this up here. Let me throw in a sky dome. Oops. I'll go this way. There we go. Okay, so there's my sky dome. And as I play with that exposure, you can see how it's adjusting the roughness of it. It stopped working. Oh, I'm going too far above it, that's why. On the texture itself. That's what I should have. Yes, on the sky, on the texture itself. Okay. So So that will apply for any of those. So anytime you see these numbers where it's just a number, if you're not getting the results you are after, click that alpha as luminance. Okay? And that should, hit it again. That should read that brightness as the actual value that it's doing. Otherwise, it's not going to know what to do, and it just won't read it the correct way at all. So that was the biggest thing that kind of popped up. The other thing, and this is just kind of like a, I don't know what you're doing here, Maya. I can still move stuff, but I have this weird cursor. Let me just hit the render button again real quick. Maybe that'll stop it. There we go. Okay, whatever that was. So this is an annoyance that I had. So I went to Arnold and I wanted to make a hotkey for render, Arnold render. And typically to make a hotkey, we would go to Window, Settings, Preferences, and go to our hotkey editor. From inside this window, I should be able to pick anything that's inside Maya and give it a hotkey. So I should be able to go here to editors, it's not editors, other items, let's say, and find anything that I want and give it a hotkey. Okay, even here's my menu items. Okay, there is no Arnold listed inside here. It's really annoying. It's not listed anywhere in there. So what I had to do, you'll see the regular render view, render current frame is right there. But I want the Arnold one because the Arnold one allows me to update as I play with stuff. So after playing around with it for a while, I went to my Arnold tab. This is the render view. This is actually render. I was able to right click on this and say edit. There's the command that I need. Okay, so if you want to write it down, or if you want to just do that exact little hack thing, import space mtoa.ui.arnold menu as Arnold menu semicolon Arnold menu.arnold m2a render view parentheses. Okay, so with those two things right there, that's what will give you a hotkey for your render view. So then I still have it copied. So then I could go into my hotkey editor. There we go. It doesn't matter. Oh, I don't need to go there. Go here. I paste that little script. Oops, new first, sorry. Then paste the script. Tell it it's Python. Render from Arnold. And then I say save. Okay. So what that does is it creates a new command called render from Arnold that is now something I can use. So when I go here to custom scripts, here is render from Arnold. And all I have to do is go into this area. I liked Cinema's hotkey Control R, so that's why I assigned it to Control R. It'll probably say something like, this is already assigned. Do you want to override? You would say yes. Okay. Then you hit save and close. I already have it, so I don't need it. So now I can just hit Control R instead of having to go through all that. And there it is. Okay, you can see the roughness definitely did update after this one. A second ago it wasn't updating. All right. Cool. So here's the gear one. So I'm just going to give you an overview of what the gear stuff is, and just show you some of the stuff that's going to be it's going to come into it. Okay. So let me just hide this real quick, and I'll hide that too. Alright, so here are my gears that I created. Now, we showed this before, and we got a big laugh out of it, especially with the people who took it last semester. Under the polygon primitives, you can just make a gear. Okay? It's still funny. We can customize what this gear looks like. Our goal, anytime we model something, texture something, whatever, is to make it as simple as possible, as few divisions as possible. Okay? So all of these divisions going up are unnecessary. We do not need any of those. So I want to go over here to my height divisions and take that off. Okay, so I've taken those off. The shape of these I want to look at and say, you know, do I want that many, or do I want these to be that shaped? There's a gear tip, which is the tip here. We'll control that. There's a gear middle, which controls, guess what, the middle. There's a twist, which you could have a twist in there. So if you had some fancy gears, you could add those to it. Again, kind of fancy. Also some tapering, so you could, again, do some pretty cool stuff with that. There's gear offset. So you're actually like offsetting how far away the spokes are. I don't like this as gear offset. How far those spokes are from the center of it. Their spacing, so you can adjust their spacing. I can adjust the internal radius, so this circle. Okay, but like I said, keep it simple, especially if you're not 100% comfortable with this kind of stuff yet. Just keep it simple. So let's pull this out. I'm just going to go with my height divisions, take those off. I'm going to go with the height and lower this. That's like a really thick gear. I don't like that. There we go, that's better. Internal radius, like 0.5 is good. Okay. And then I'll debate on a couple of these here. I do have this kind of like chamfered gear tip. Some of them it's just square. It's good to kind of mix it up and have a variety of it. What I would do is I would say, okay, this is a good gear. I would duplicate it and shove it off to the side. And then I would grab this gear and then change some of those settings. Okay, that way I still have my history of the original one that I can base everything off of. So then I'll go back to this and say, okay, now I want this one to be the tip. I want to be 1.2. Oops, that looks ugly. 1 and 1. That's good. Okay, so like that. That looks good there. Okay, then I'll duplicate that, scoot it over, and I can go back to this one. Maybe I want a bigger gear, so I'll take the radius up, give it some more sides. Okay, I have to have enough sides in order for this to actually be something that could function, right? Because if I look at this, that's not fitting together right. Maybe 30, maybe 20. 20 could work, possibly, maybe. I'm going to actually go back to 32 and just change the spacing here. Gear spacing, 0.5. There we go. So that should work pretty good. So that looks like it could fit together. We're not animating this, we're not printing it, we're not actually making a physical model of this. It just has to look like they could actually go together, okay? I'll duplicate that, shove it off to the side. Then I'll take this one, and I'll take the tip, and I'll put it at 0.5, okay? There's my variety. So I have basically these, these 4 gears here. And again, I can make 20 different kinds of gears. The idea is that we have these little template type things. That's what we want to focus on. This thing here is my base one. I throw him on a layer and hide him so he's gone. On all of this, I want to create bevels and I want to smooth it out. It's not going to render nice. If I look at, where's that big one? And they're looking okay from here, but you'll definitely see some kind of like faceting in this when we start to render that out, okay? So I want to have some smoothing on here. So I don't want to smooth this now. I don't want to bevel this now. What I want to do is lay out my UVs for it, then do my bevel, and see how it looks. Looks good, I'll not touch the UVs again. Then I'll smooth it, and then I'll adjust the UVs again, okay? So let's try this out on just one of these little pieces. So I'm just going to duplicate him and try it out and see. Now notice I haven't like laid out my gears into a fashion yet because I want to lay all the UVs out, get all my texture stuff set up on these, and then start duplicating things because there's no point in positioning everything, then laying out the UVs on every single piece separately. That doesn't make sense. Whoops. Oh my God. This, that, there. Okay. I don't need my outliner. I'm just going to hide that. Okay. So let's try just laying out the UVs first. Okay. So if you were to attack this project or this gear, what's the first thing you would do to lay out the UVs? No. Always freeze your transforms. Okay? We always want to freeze the transforms because if we've scaled it, the next step won't be happy. Okay? So I always freeze my transforms. And then in this case, because it's such a like weird shape, I'm going to use an automatic. Okay? Now that eventually will be like, well, that seems like crazy because you're going to get a bunch of pieces. And I will. Okay, look at all the pieces that I get with this. But I know already that if I were to take those gear faces and I said this face here, this face here, this face here, that face there, most likely I should be able to cut it. If this was a real world object, just cut it and flatten that out, right? Like that is an object that should lay pretty flat. So all I've done is automatically cut all these things into pieces. Now I'm just going to put it together in one big strip. So watch how I do that. So I automaticed this, which gave me this big mess. Now I'm going to go to my UV or to my edges, and I'm going to click on this edge, hold down Shift, double click this edge, and that selects it all the way around. So all the edges that are part of that gear sprocketing have been selected. Okay. Now I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to right click or Shift right click and say Move and Sew. Now I know something bad is going to happen, but I just want you to see what's bad is going to happen. Okay. So what happened is it formed a circle. Okay. Because I didn't cut it somewhere still, it's still in a circle form. Now, just so you can see, I'm going to go to the UV shell and click on it. I'm going to Shift right click. I'm going to go to my unfold. Everything's still set. This is set to 1. This is set to 4096. I'm going to apply it. Now, look at what this gives me. It gives me the gear. Now, it doesn't look very pretty, and I'm assuming that if I were to turn my texture on, my checker map, that it's going to give me some warbly type stuff, and that looks pretty ugly. But it's nothing to worry about, because all I have to do is go to Edge, find an edge, whoops, cut the edge, hide the image so we don't have to blind ourselves, and then just do the unfold again. And see how the unfold just like, boop, a perfect strip. That's all we had to do, okay? Now we can go through and orient it. We did that before, right? Straight. Now this is way too long, right? That's like incredibly long. So what I'm going to do is, just for my own ease of doing this, I'm going to scale it up to about the size of that. So see how it's like as big as this? That just gives me a good way to go in here and say if I come to 0.5 and I cut it about there, and I go to 0 and cut it about there, I should end up with about 4 equal pieces. That's all it's doing. So cut, and then grab this again, unfold it again, and there we go. The unfold doesn't do anything because it's already unfolded. It's already flat. It's not until I go to the layout, 4096 here, preserve 3D ratios. I do have the ability to rotate shells, so I turn that on. I just set it to 90. This is 4000. And then I lay out the UVs. And then what should happen is those 4 pieces should now lay nicely side by side, all fitting within that same shell. There they are. Super nice, super simple. Okay? Now the inner circle, I do the same thing there. So I would grab these pieces, whoops, in here, and I could just grab the edges, and I could literally just go like this and like that, and say Move and Sew. And then I can look at the size of this, look at the size of that, and say, yeah, I'll probably put those together. There we go. So now I have all my pieces, so now I can go and, I don't need to unfold because they're already unfolded, I just need to lay out. Okay, unfolding isn't going to take it when you have something that's kind of like bunched up, and it's going to unfold it. Okay, the layout one is going to take something that is already unfolded, and it's going to lay it out nicely inside that right square. Okay, so that fits pretty good. Now the other part of each one of these pieces, we're going to have the gear that goes around it, and we're going to have like basically like something that connects it in the middle. If there's nothing there, bless you, if there's nothing there, then it's like, how is that gear even like standing up? So we have to have something inside there. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. Now what I want to do is I want to add a bevel to this. So I'm going to go to all of these areas like this, and I'm going to add a bevel. Now this is the long way to do it. Let me close that. There you go. So I put 0.1 here, 2 there. Now I need to create a bevel that goes all the way around this. Now look at how horrible this would be to have to go through and select all of this. Okay, that's pretty horrible. So I'm just going to undo before I did that bevel here, so I can do them all together. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to go to Edge. Now if you remember from Cinema, we had this thing called a thong break, which was anything that was a sharp corner, it would automatically select those sharp corners. Maya has something very similar to it. So under select, which is like the perfect spot for it, use constraints. So we want to constrain our selection to only things with hard edges. Okay? A lot of stuff in here, just pay attention to what you need. I'm going to constrain the current selection and the next. Perfect. And under geometry, I'm going to constrain the angle. Okay? So I want anything that is between these two numbers. Any angle that is above 80 degrees and below 136 degrees. So the second I hit activate, that works. Okay? So now I have all of those edges all the way around. Plus I have these ones in the middle. If that didn't work, I would just go here and just keep playing with these numbers, maybe making that span a little bit wider until I found that right range. Okay? So now I bevel. Now I can go to my fraction and set this to 0.2 and my segments to 2. That works. Perfect. Okay? So now that works good. Now look at, if you can see it here, look at that edge, how faceted it looks. That's pretty ugly. If I select and hit 3, it nicely smooths it out. Now the problem is that if we have our UVs tightened here and then we smooth it out, it gets really sloppy and loose. So when we take this into Substance, we have to make sure our UVs are nice and smooth. Okay? So I'm not going to lay out the UVs here, but what I do want to see is if I jump back to the UV editor, grab all the pieces and just do another unfold, will it relax those bevels? Okay? And it looks like it did. It looks like everything worked. Okay? It automatically, because I put in 2 divisions for my bevel, one went to one piece, one went to the other piece. So you see on this piece, there's one for here. And then if I go to the gear, there's one for that. Okay? If I had one, then it might end up on the gear. It might end up on the top piece. Who knows? So that's perfect. So then I could take this, and I like to duplicate things so I can always go back. And then I can smooth it out. That's good. Oops. And when I smooth it out, I noticed something. You'll see that these became rounded. That's a bad thing. Let's go back here, and you'll see that my selection did not grab that. So I need to undo before my bevel. There we go. Go back to my edge selection, grab all this stuff. Select constraints. Okay, remember I said it may not select everything, so we go in here and play with that number. That's what I'm going to do. So I go back to current, geometry, angle, make sure you play with angle, and pull this one down some. Yep. So now that's going to work. So I'm going to marquee it again, and now I grabbed everything. So this minimum angle was just too low. When I'm done with this menu, I need to reset it. Unlike Cinema, if I didn't reset it, I just closed that box, I could only select edges that met that criteria. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to select these. Alright, so it's back to bevel edge, back to my fraction being 0.2 and my segments being 2. Perfect. Okay, and then I can duplicate this, scoot it up, smooth it out, and then go to my UV and unfold it. There we go. And then I could lay it out again, but I'm going to need to do something else first, so I'll just do that first. Alright, so there it is. So there is my finished gear for that one piece. So now all of these other pieces, I need to do the same exact thing. I need to grab it, I need to lay out the UVs, I need to bevel it, and then I need to smooth it out. Okay? So I'll do that to all of those. Now I also need to, and I'm just going to scoot this one up for a second, put a little plug right here so it looks like that it makes sense of why this gear is floating in space. So I'm going to grab a cylinder. In order to get this cylinder right in the center of this, I click the cylinder, I shift click the gear, and under modify snap align objects option box, I'm going to say align the midpoints, X, Y, and Z to the last selected objects. So what this is going to do, this object's here, this object's there, it's going to move the first selected object to the last selected object using the midpoints. There we go. So it snaps it right in the center. There's no guesswork. Done. Same thing here. I don't need a subdivision on the cap. I just need to scale this down so that it looks like it fits. Like so. That's good. I'm going to scale it vertically also. Good. And then I'm going to start doing some extrusions on it just to give this, you know, a little bit of shape. All right, so I've just given this a little bit of design. You can design whatever you want. It doesn't matter, just as long as it looks like something that could be holding a gear in place. Even on your gear itself, okay, and this is why I like to save backups. Even on your gear itself, before you go and you smooth it out, we can go into edge loops. Oops. This is a little hack, okay, so I have to insert an edge loop. It's not going to let me insert an edge loop here because I have these bevels on there. So either I go back before I did the bevels, or I just take this line and I scale it out. And then I go to here and I add a new line for that. There we go. So now I can add another edge loop here. And then just do a little extrusion on it. Just to push it down some. Okay, and then I would go into this area and add some beveling just to tighten up that corner. Now what I'm doing, it might, you know, seem like, oh my god, that's a lot of stuff. It's really not. It's doing the same stuff. It's extruding, beveling, and laying out UVs. The more you're going to do this, the easier it's going to be. And because of how often we're kind of like, we laid out the UVs at the beginning, we're not doing any drastic shape changes. All I have to do for this shape is just go back to the editor, grab the pieces, and just unfold it again. Okay? Now, had I extruded 35 different shapes out of this thing and made a character, then that's completely different. It's a re-layout of the UVs. Adding fine detail, no big issue. You'll see that this one actually laid it out perfectly right there. It just opens those up. It's awesome. All right, so cool. Where's my plug at right there? Okay, so same thing here. We want to add bevels to this. We want to smooth it out. So at this point, I would lay out the UVs. Then I would add my bevels. Then I would smooth it out. Okay? If you want fine detail, add the fine detail, lay out the UVs, and then smooth it out. Either one works. Okay? Now the other thing to consider is what is actually being rendered. Don't waste your pixels on stuff that's not going to be seen. So if my shot is from this view, let's just pretend I'm working with these two items. Am I going to see any of this stuff? No. So why have it, right? It's just going to take up space inside of my UV editor. So I basically want to delete anything that's not going to be seen. So if I go into my side view, I just marquee that. I grabbed a little bit too much just so you can see this, okay? That's good enough, I guess. All right, so you can see it here how I grabbed too much. Shift minus, or shift less than sign. See how it subtracts that, and then I can just delete it. That's perfect. And then the same thing here. Go to faces, delete it. Now what about, here's my ring here. What about this? See all those faces that are on the inside? They're colliding with the other piece. We're not going to see them, so we can delete those too. Okay? Now what that's going to do for you is it's going to open up more space inside here. Because look at, now we have all this extra space that we didn't have a few minutes ago. So that will help out your UV layout. The other thing we need to do is, let me just open Substance right quick. That's the right one. If we tried to take, let's say we had 30 gears, I stuffed 30 gears into that corner. My maximum substance texture size is 8,000 experimental. Okay, that's what that says, experimental. So I can't really go too big on that. Okay, so my max size basically is 4,096. Recent? Yes. Alright, so what I'm going to show you is all of my gears kind of bunched up into one of those quadrants. Maybe if it opens. It's still thinking. Okay. So, just to show you, if I took this gear and I duplicated it and I pushed it over. Alright, so I have this many gears. I grab all their UVs and I do a layout. And what's going to happen is when I have 5 gears on here and I do my layout, all of my gears are now going to get smaller, right? Because they all have to fit within that small square. So there's the problem, is because we have 4,000 pixels, now there's less pixels per gear bunch. That's really going to cause an issue whenever it decides to calculate. So here is what happens when you bunch them all together. See all of these? Like, look at how tiny these pieces are. I'm not going to be able to fit enough detail into these pieces at this size. So our solution, one solution, could be to export each piece individually, right? I can export one gear, do all the stuff on that, export the other gear, do all the stuff to that. That's like way too much work for me. It's still thinking. So, come on, Maya, just quit. All right, it's still thinking. All right. So what my solution is, what? I don't think I clicked on that. Is to do something that I told you not to do. Okay. So before, where would you put your texture inside here? Where would you put your UVs? The first grid, right? So the other grids we can also use. Okay, and Substance will read those. So I'm still getting used to this interface. Hold on. Tools, show UV toolkit. There we go. Whew. Slide this over here, snap it into position. I need another screen. All right. So let me grab my gears over here. And this is where all of my gears are laid out. Okay? So I basically have one gear and its little plug center thing for each one of those squares. All right? So here's one gear and a plug, one gear and a plug, one gear and a plug. Same thing, same thing, same thing. All throughout here. Now some of these do look more complex than others. Like this one here. I forget why specifically that I have it like that on this one. But whatever, it works. I've deleted off all the stuff that I don't need. So if you look at the backs of these, you'll see that there are basically hollow pieces because I don't need the backs of them. That's just wasted UV space. If for some reason I needed the back still, the other thing that I could do is take the front and the back and sandwich them together. Okay? That way I still keep the back in case for some reason I see a reflection of it. I can always get that back later if it came down to it. Very simply in Maya, we can mirror stuff just like you could in Cinema. Just mirror it, and then it would work the same way. Okay? So for now, I just gone. So now, how do we do that? What we do is we lay out the UVs just like before. So this one here, perfect. Look at that. I grabbed the right one. This one here is in that corner. I need to move it to a new corner. So I'm going to go to Textures, or Image, and display this. There it goes. Now, if you look at it, do you see how that checkerboard is only inside that box? Okay, the one that it's in. If I go to UV Shell and I grab all this stuff and I go to the Move tool and I start moving it, see how it shows that? Okay. So the second we start butting into another box, we're going to show the shell for that box. So every time I select an item, it should only show that shell. Should only show that shell. It's hard to say. So what I want to do is take this piece. I'm going to go to Transform in the UV Toolkit, and I can just say Move. So I'm going to say 1, and what this is going to do is move one UV unit over. So it'll just move it to whichever direction I click. So I go boop, and now it's over there. Okay? So you do have to remember where these are at. So I know that I have 4 and 4. Maybe I have 5 and 5. I might have 5 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just to be safe, I'll throw it there. Okay. Now this one's showing up. I'm not sure why that's showing up. That's something else. I don't have any pieces over there. No. Okay. So I know that it's locked into that exact position. It's in that area. Sweet. Okay, so then I would do the same thing for each one of these. I grab this in its gear. I go to my UV editor. I would grab the shell, and I would make sure that it's in a unique position. By the time you're done with all of your gears and stuff, you should be able to grab all of them, click the right button, and see them all laid out. So this one here didn't go into the right spot, so of course I could just grab it and move it into the right spot. No big deal, just going back there. Okay. All right, so that's how you're going to lay out your UVs and model this project. Now for mine, I added in a little like glass screen that I'll have on there just to have something extra. I still have to add a texture to that. And then a little box to kind of house these. You don't have to add either of those. You could just do the gears, okay? I just want to see the gears with the little stoppers just kind of like staggered so that it makes sense. So that when you look at this gear, see how his little pegs are sticking in there? It's sticking through that a little bit, but nobody cares. Same thing here. Let me turn off my texture so you can see this better, maybe. There it is. All right. So you can see this one's touching that one, and so on. And so they all kind of are notched in together. Nothing's really intersecting too crazy. That part's all the same, okay? Model your gear, lay out the UVs, bevel it, smooth it, lay out the UVs, nice and organized, and then you can start offsetting it. When you get to the substance part, finally loaded, look at the detail of this. You can see how grainy these bumps are. I mean, I'm kind of zoomed in a lot, but there's not a whole lot of detail inside here that we can capture because of how bunched up all of these things are. And then just so you can see this too, I'm going to open up the distributed one. And then what this one should show is that we can capture a lot more detail because our UVs are bigger, because we have more, we maximized our texture space. Okay, so here's one of the pieces, and you can see how much detail I have on this one compared to that other one. I have to hit M so we can actually see it. There we go. Okay, so we wouldn't be able to get that much detail on this unless we did that. Now, when you bring in, you're going to export the same way. You grab all your stuff, you export it out. When you bring it into Substance, you're going to go to the same thing here. So because I had glass, I chose the alpha test one. If you don't have anything glassy, then you would just choose the regular metallic roughness HQ. You would select your mesh. You would make sure that you choose this button here. Create a texture set per UDIM. Okay? And what that means is that it's going to basically make a new texture set for each one of those items. So I said the thing we could do is export each one out individually. This one exports them out separately or all together, brings them in all together, but we work on them separately. Okay? So over here is my texture set list. Yours might be in a different spot because of how my screen is screwing stuff. But each one of these items is one of my gears. I can turn things off so I can just see my gears. And then the rest of this is going to be pretty much the same. So I would go to my Smart Materials. I would drop on, let's say I'm going to go to number 1 here. I can solo it so I can just see number 1, so I don't have to see everything. Say I want this to be copper red, so I'll drop copper red onto this box, onto my layers. This will go through and do copper red. Now remember, I still have to do the baking, right? I have to click the bake button and get all that stuff to work. This copper red isn't going to look, that's what's called, copper red? Red bleached, okay, that makes sense. I still have to go to my bake right here. Everything is so bunched up, it's ridiculous. And then I have to make sure that I say use high poly mesh. And now in this one, here's something to pay attention to. Bake all texture sets or just bake the one I'm on. Most likely you want to bake all the texture sets, but at first you may want to do just one, just to make sure that one looks good. If that one doesn't look good, you may tweak settings and then do bake all. Okay, so for now I'm just going to hit bake 1001. All right, so then what I would do is the same stuff that we've done before. I could paint on this layer, I could add my own stuff, I could tweak it just like we showed last time. The substance part for 1001 is exactly the same. What I do after, though, is going to be a little bit different. I'll go into the exporting part later. For 102, all I would do is if I want to use the same material, I can copy those layers, go to 102 and paste them in, and then all that stuff will populate. And then I could change it from there. Okay? So I really just did one, and I copied and pasted to each one of them, and then went back and just tweaked some settings. That thickness is crazy. And what's cool about this too is that it actually is reading all of the geometry. It's not reading just the one piece of geometry. Had we exported each piece separately, we would lose out on like the ambient occlusion between the surfaces and stuff. There we go. All right, so now it's going to update. That's much better, right? It's a lot better. Okay. So let's say I love this texture, and I'm like, yep, that's what I want. I just right-click, and I say copy layers. I go to 102. I right-click, and then I would say paste layers. Okay? And then I could tweak stuff inside there. I'll get more into substance next week, too. But I just wanted to show you that. Okay? So if you get done with your still image, then you can start on this stuff. Cool? Questions? Sir? No, don't turn your new image in yet. The way that I'm doing the grading is I'm going to be coming around to each station and looking at your stuff. So I'll start that next week, coming around and checking out your stuff. For the first assignment, I'm going to be looking for, because it's our first assignment, do you have an object? Are the UVs laid out? Do you have a texture? Is it rendered to the right resolution with some light? That's it. This one's going to be a little more specific, and we'll get more specific as we go along. All right, anything else?